Chapter 18. Shaken from the experience and the horrible memories it brought, I fell back on the cot, breathing hard, just like on the bridge. Then, in one quick motion, I sat straight up. The bridge. He has a device to help locate nuclear power sources with electrostatic ion thrusters. The surveyor didn't have electrostatic ion thrusters, did she? She had ionized plasma thrusters, I remembered now. So he had been lying to August. That wasn't what the device was for. But the device must have led him here. And August was no fool. Whatever his father told him would have to be close enough to the truth to seem plausible. The CMR scanner. Compact Magnetic Resonance Scanner. Magnetic resonance imaging. I knew that a few hundred years ago an MRI had filled up a whole room. Even when the doctor was in medical school, they had been enormous to accommodate the size of the magnet required. But now they were small. A method had been developed to strengthen the magnet using safe radiation. Dozens of facts flooded my mind. The twinges in my knee, which I'd thought nothing of at the time, had occurred less than a week before August and his father arrived. The intense, unbearable pain on the bridge. My mind rushed back to that day. For the first second after I hit the ground, I felt shaken, but normal. Then the pain arose suddenly, just like with the scan, and continued for several seconds before stopping abruptly, just as when I'd shut off the scanner. August had been resting in the quarters he shared with his father, and had later told me that many of his father's devices had been thrown around by the impact, and he'd had to get up and take care of it. Of course! The device that had led him here could detect the radialloy. The twinges, those had been brought on as he sought to ascertain where I was, and when we'd hit the asteroid, it had fallen and been accidentally turned on, and the close proximity of it had let off such radiation that it had resulted in greatly intensified pain. When August turned it off, not knowing what it really was, the radiation had abated and the pain had subsided. I no longer had any doubt that it was the radialloy that my father wanted, not me. I should have told the captain about everything before. Then we wouldn't be in this trouble now. The captain had never let me down. He was trustworthy. Just like the doctor. I had to help him. I had to tell the doctor I was sorry and pay for my mistake. I had to fix everything back to how it was before. Just as I was about to head out the door to find the doctor, an officer stepped in, face stern. "Miss Lloyd, dinner is served." My heart sank. Commander XIIX knew just where I was and meant to ensure that I went to dinner. But it didn't matter. Somehow I would outsmart him and save my father. My real father. The one who had the best right to my trust, love, and loyalty. The captain, Gilders, August, and the other primary bridge officers sat together at a table in one corner of the mess hall, along with myself. I looked around anxiously for the doctor, but he was nowhere to be seen. Armed guards stood in the far corners of the room, alert and primarily focused on our little group. The captain was seething, and it was all Gilders could do to contain him. "The villain!" He tore a bite out of his steak. "The audacity of that—" "Calm yourself, Harrison," said Gilders calmly. It was the first time I'd ever heard him use the captain's first name. "If they hear you talking that way, they'll only keep a closer watch on us." It didn't seem to have much of an effect on the captain. He muttered, "Well, what are we going to do about it? I'm not just going to sit here and let him take my command." He glared at Commander XIIX, wrath shooting from his eyes. "He's blocked my Riscom from transmitting. He says he'll do the same to anyone who causes trouble." Curious, I entered the doctor's comm number and tried to call. Nothing. I kept quiet and focused on eating. August, too, stayed out of the discussion. "For now, we shall have to do as he says," Gilders observed. "You're no help at all," the captain spluttered, then looked suspiciously at August. "And what are you doing here? Did your father send you to spy on us?" August maintained his silence. "There has to be some way we can get the ship back." "Careful, Captain," I ventured. "If we resist, he might hurt the doctor." "What is all that about, anyway? I don't understand. How does he know Jerry will go insane?" I choked and let my eyes plead with August. He quietly explained about the machine while I picked at my food, appetite suddenly gone. The other men were quiet when he had finished. The captain looked at me.
Why would he do that?
I don't know, I managed. I think he just wanted a hostage. I also thought that he hadn't wanted me to be able to consult the doctor, but I kept quiet about that. I still wasn't sure who to trust, and there were 3 other men at the table besides the captain and Gilders. Sure, they'd worked here a long time, but who knew beyond doubt which side they were on?
Where is the machine now? The captain asked.
He's locked it in his quarters, August answered.
As captain, I can override all security systems.
Could, Gilders pointed out. August nodded. He's overridden your clearance so no one can override but him.
How did he do that?
August shrugged. His father wasn't informing him about everything, I supposed. After all, he'd made it pretty clear that he didn't agree with the mutiny. I doubted Commander Howitz would turn to him. The captain muttered something I couldn't understand and wasn't sure I wanted to. Do you have a plan, Gilders? I asked hopefully. The helmsman spoke stoically as he took a bite of his food.
It's much easier to do something without being noticed if one is invisible. Invisibility? And just how do you plan to accomplish that?
Ignoring the captain's interjection, I asked Gilders, You mean not draw any attention to yourself, so he won't think of you as a threat?
Precisely.
Does anyone know where the doctor is? I asked. The men all shook their heads.
He's not in his quarters? The captain asked,
brows furrowing in worry. No, sir. I checked there on my way to the mess hall. I haven't seen him all day. The captain reached out and touched my hand.
We'll save him, Andy. I promise.
I wasn't reassured, but I tried to sound brave. Does anyone know how Elmira's doing? Mr. Ralston, the data controller, spoke up.
I carried a tray into the galley just a moment ago and saw her. She seemed fine.
I tried to think. If we could contact Crash for help, we'd be well on our way to getting out of this whole horrible mess. Captain, I began, leaning forward, but before I could speak further, Commander Howitz approached. I jerked back in my chair, hitting my shin on the table leg. I winced, but didn't say anything.
Hello, Andy, he said with a smile.
I had to fight to keep from grimacing. Did he really think that I was still going to believe him? Hello?
I would like to see you in engineering.
He said it politely, so politely that he almost reminded me of August for a moment. But it was a dark politeness, while August's was always soft and timid. I can't go to engineering, I reminded, sounding more haughty than I intended.
Did it hurt you before?
I blushed. I'll be right down, I said.
Excellent.
He smiled. Then his expression turned to a stone that matched the gravelly voice much better as he surveyed the men at the table.
Back to your stations, please, gentlemen.
August flushed, and the captain looked furious, but as much as he might rail and complain, he knew as well as Gilders that there was nothing they could do. All 6 men stood up, glanced at me, and left.
Be down in 5 minutes, he said, trying to soften his face, but not exactly succeeding.
I nodded, then watched his broad back as he turned and left the mess hall.